Okay, this is lesson 4.3, and this is common factoring, or GCF, greatest common factoring. Well, I just kind of spoiled the first blank. GCF is a greatest common factor. And it's the largest factor, which means number or letter, or combination, that you can divide all terms in a polynomial by. So for example, it can be a number, like 3, number. It can be a letter, like x, or it can be a combination, like 3x. Factoring and expanding are not the same thing. They're opposites, in fact. Expanding is when you're using something like the distributive property, where you take brackets and you make them bigger, and you show all of the terms multiplied out. Factoring is going the opposite way. It's taking all of the multiplied out terms and putting them back in the brackets. So let's look for some GCFs. GCFs are the biggest number we can divide into 12 and 9. Well, to tell, you look at both 12 and 9. And you look for all of the factors. Well, 1 times 12 is 12. So is 3 times 4. And 2 times 6. Those are all the factors of 12. 9 has 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. So those are all the factors of 9. And if we look, the biggest number in both of those sets of numbers is 3. So the GCF is 3. I'm going to leave 4 and 6 for you to try. Let's look at x squared and x cubed. Well, the things that multiply to give us x squared are x and x. The things that multiply to give us x cubed are x and x and x. What's common to both of these? Well, there's x's common to both of them. In fact, 2 of them. X times x is x squared. The greatest common factor to x squared and x cubed is x squared. When you have letters involved, you take the most number of letters you can. There's 2 x's here and there's 3 x's here. 2 is the most we can take from both piles, so we take both. This one's a little trickier because it's a combination of numbers and letters that's the greatest common factor. If we break down 4a, well, a is a factor, 1 is a factor, 4 is a factor, and 2 is a factor. Because 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, and a is one of the a's. If we break down 8a cubed, we get 1 times 8 is 8, and 2 times 4. And there's a cubed, so there's 1, 2, 3 a's. These are all the factors of 8a cubed. So what can we take? What's the biggest number we can take? Well, the biggest number we can take is 4. And what's the most a's we can take? Well, there's 1a here, so we can only take 1a here. The greatest common factor is 4a. Biggest number and the biggest letter. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor our first example. And we're going to factor by finding the greatest common factor. So we're going to look for the greatest common factor between all 3 of these terms. 3x cubed, 3x squared, 6x, and 36. Since all of the terms don't have an x, we won't be able to factor out a letter. We won't be able to take a letter. So our greatest common factor is just going to be a number. And our smallest number is 3. And the factors of 3 are just 1 and 3. So our only choices to common factor are really just the numbers 1 and 3. Well, let's see if all of these numbers divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. That one works. 6 divided by 3 is 2. That one works. 36 divided by 3 is 12. That one works too. So that means our greatest common factor is 3. Now to actually do the factor step, what we do is we take the number 3, our greatest common factor, and we do an upside down division sign. And then we write our expression, 3x squared plus 6x minus 36. And now you divide each of these terms by 3. 3x squared divided by 3 is just 1x squared. 6 divided by 3 is 2x. And negative 36 divided by 3 is negative 12. Your last step is to write out your answer. Your answer will always be the greatest common factor, bracket, what you're left with, x squared plus 2x minus 12. So I'm going to show that with highlighters so you can kind of see it. I'm going to use yellow and pink. Your greatest common factor goes in front of what we're dividing, and it goes in front of our answer to the division question, which goes in the bracket. So the original question was 3x squared plus 6x minus 12, and we were asked to factor it. Well, we can factor it by dividing out the greatest common factor, which is exactly what we did, and then we showed it in front of the bracket. Now, if you wanted to check to see if you got the answer right, the way you can check is you can expand. 3x squared plus 2x minus 12. What do I mean by expand? I mean actually distribute the number back in. 3 times x, 3 times 2, 3 times 12. Let's see what we get. 3 times x squared is 3x squared. 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times negative 12 is negative 36. That was the question, so that means we did it right. All right, let's try one more. I know it says practice, but we're going to do it together. Find the GCF. Now this time, each of our terms has a letter in it. So we're going to start by finding the biggest letter we can take out. Well, it's X is the letter that's in all 3 terms, and there's 5 of them here, 3 of them here, and 4 of them here. The most we can take is 3. We can take 3 from each of these because each pile has at least 3. The biggest number we can take out is 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 35 divided by 5 is 7. All of them will divide by 5. So this is our greatest common factor. So if we want to divide, we write our question down. And we divide it by our greatest common factor. And let's see what we get as an answer. 5 divided by 5 is 1. x5 divided by x3, we write down how many x's will be left. Well, if we're taking away 3 from 5, we'd be left with 2. 15 divided by 5 is 3. x3 divided by x3, we're taking all 3 away. We're not left with any x's, so we're just left with the number 3. And our last term, negative 35 divided by 5 is negative 7. 4x's divided by 3x's, we're left with just 1x. And there's our answer to our division. So if we want to write our final answer now, we write our greatest common factor, bracket, what we get from dividing. And there you can see the two parts. Our answer to the division and our greatest common factor. You can think of these as both multiplication and division. Factoring is like division, and expanding is like multiplication. So of course you could also check this by expanding it out, and I might ask you to try that after the lesson. Let's flip the page over. Now in our last example, our common factor can actually be a bracket, a binomial. And if we look here, we have two terms. We have 2a with a bracket, and we have minus 3 with a bracket. The bracket is what's common to both terms. So we can common factor that bracket. And write it first. And then what's left over, we write in a second bracket. 2a minus 3. And if you look, here's the second bracket. 2a minus 3. There it is. Let's try one more. We've got a bracket, 8 minus b and 8 minus b. The bracket's what's common. So we start by writing that bracket down. And what goes in our second bracket is what's left. B plus 2. B plus 2. All right, and that's it for common factoring. Thanks for watching lesson 4.3, and I'll see you next time for lesson 4.4.